Hey everybody, it's Mr. Loose again, and the technique of the week this week is going to be colored pencils. So all we're going to need today are just our regular, everyday, standard color pencils, but you can do these with Prismacolors or watercolor pencils, but we're just going to do it with the regular color pencils for practice today. So as you can see, we have a lot to do, so we'll get started up here in the top left with varying pressure. Now, pressure is the amount of weight that you put down when you're coloring. I know some of you have heard me use this phrase before, so I'm just going to give you a clear example of what that is. So we're going to do a light pressure, a medium pressure, and then a dark pressure. So I'm going to use blue just because it'll be easier to see, but you can use any color you like. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press down really soft and light, like I'm barely touching the paper. Okay, and that's it. And we don't want to go back and forth too much because if you layer an abrasive color like blue or something a lot darker, the more you layer, the darker it's going to be. So we are, however, going to get a little bit darker and a little bit heavier on our pressure than this one for the medium. We don't want it to be too hard and dark, but we want it to be darker than what we just did. So I'm going to press down just a little bit harder. And this is going to be our medium pressure. Okay, so I'm just pressing down on the paper a little bit harder than I did with this. So light, medium, and now we're gonna do dark. And with dark, you're just gonna go in and color as hard as you can. And there we go. So we have our light pressure, medium pressure, and hard pressure. All right, so when I ask you to color something lightly with light pressure to start off with, this is what I'm referring to. And when I tell you that you want the colors to be really intense and bold, then you should know that you need to be doing hard pressure. All right, so now we're gonna move on to stippling. So stippling is a great effect to add visual texture to make something look bumpy, scratchy, or maybe like the consistency of sand. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing, a light, medium, and dark version of it, but instead of coloring in, you're just going to carefully press down on the paper. That's all I'm gonna do. So it kind of looks like a few random polka dots. That's stippling. So when I look at that, I can see that there's a little bit of like stubble, I guess you'd call it, and like the little bumpy hairs that you would get after you shave. So this would be like very light stubble or just a few rocks in the sand. But now we're gonna do medium, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna do more and we're gonna do them closer together, but we're not gonna do too many where we fill up the whole square. So I'm just gonna go around. And I'm doing this hard enough to make a mark, but I don't want to break the pencil. So there I did a little bit more, and they're a little bit closer together. So this is medium, and this is light. There's not as many, they're further apart. So it's light, it's kind of hard to see. But here, there's a lot more together. So now what we're gonna do is for the dark, we're gonna go in and do the same thing, but we're gonna use as many little dots as we can to fill it up, okay? So fill in our little square. So the more I put in there and the closer they get together, it already looks darker. So I did the exact same thing in all three boxes, but I put very few and further apart. And the more I make and the closer they get, the darker it gets, okay? So that's stippling. And that's a really awesome way to add any kind of visual texture to your picture, whether it's sand or hair or rough skin or rocky terrain. It really just depends. Okay, so now we're gonna go over here to hatching. Now with hatching, let's see, what color do I want to use? Let's use orange. For hatching, it's a bunch of lines, and the closer the lines, the darker it gets, just like stippling. And the fewer and the further apart, the lighter it is. So I'm going to start off by just doing a line, and a line, and a line, okay? So I did 4 lines, and they're right next to, well, they're next to each other, but there's some space, right? There's not as many. So now I'm going to go in, and I'm going to make a few more. I'm going to put them a little bit closer. Okay? So you can see when these are further apart, it's lighter. And you can see each individual line clearly. But then we get here, and then they start to kind of mix in together. All right? So now we're going to finish. We're going to get even closer together so that it eventually kind of looks like you're just coloring it in. I mean, I'm not. I'm doing a bunch of lines together. But you can see how they're closer and they just blend in. So this is hatching. It's the same thing as stippling, but instead of using dots, you're using lines. Further apart, the more clear you can see. The closer together, the more filled in that it gets. All right? So that's hatching. Pretty simple. Now with cross-hatching is a little bit different. Cross-hatching is where you do the exact same thing as hatching, but with a cross. So I'm going to do some lines here, here, and here. Let's do one more. And then I'm going to cross them here, 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 and here. All right, so it kind of looks like a screen. So I did fewer lines further apart, and the openings are much more open. Now let's try it with a little bit more lines and a little bit closer together. All right, so once again, the more and closer together, the darker it gets. And then finally, if I do them really close to each other, it kind of almost colors it in. All right, so these are all different ways that you can add visual texture, which, as a reminder, texture is the way that something feels. So visual texture is when you look at a picture and the dog looks furry or the ground looks rough and bumpy, but because it's a drawing or a painting, it doesn't actually feel like that. It's just the way that the artist manipulated the materials to make it look like it feels that way. So stippling, hatching, and cross-hatching are some great ways that you can add that visual texture. So now what we're going to go in, and we're going to make some patches for texture. And this is another great method. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line, a line, a line, a line. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, but I'm going to go a different direction. A line, a line, a line, a line. Okay, let's do the same thing here. Line, 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 line. So I'm alternating the way that they go. So we're going to go horizontal, horizontal. I'm sorry, vertical. Vertical, vertical, horizontal, 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 horizontal. Horizontal, 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 horizontal. Vertical, 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 vertical. And you can even go at an angle too if you want. So boop, 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 boop. And then let's go this way. Boop, 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 boop. All right, let's finish it out. So let's go like this, and there we go. So just by putting a couple of lines and alternating which directions they go, they create like these little patches like on a quilt, but it also kind of gives it some kind of texture. So it kind of looks like it feels like furry or bumpy or something. Awesome. So now those are all the different ways that you can add texture. Next, I'm going to show you the random strokes. And random strokes is really awesome if you want to make it look like there's fur or grass. And because of that, I'm going to use green, but you don't have to use that color. So all you're going to do is make a curved line, whoop, like that. Okay, and just go randomly in different directions. You can go at different lengths. You can even cross them if you want. And when you layer it, and I'm applying different amounts of pressure. Some of them I'm doing more medium, some of them doing lighter, and of course there's some that are a lot heavier. And you can go back and add as much or as few as you want and layer it. And you want it to look like the grass does that isn't mowed. But even grass that is mowed, it still is random and grows in different directions because it's growing up towards the light. But it's growing in different ways because the light is everywhere because it's above. And there you go. And with all of just those random little strokes, it now looks like I have a patch of grass on my paper. So that's pretty awesome. And you can also do that with hair, or make it look like hair with different colors, and the way you draw the lines and the way you make it fall will give you more of a hair look. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about layering. Now layering is where you blend colors to create a different look. So you're coloring on top of each other, and it's going to blend them together, and you don't have to blend them a super crazy way. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to color with medium pressure of my blue here, and then I'm going to color in medium pressure with my red like an X, just to show you that when I have the two colors and I just color on top of them with like a medium or light, that it mixes it in. You can see that beautiful shade of violet right there that it makes, okay? And so you don't ever have to do this as an X. I'm just showing you that when we mix the red with the blue, that's the result we get. Now we're gonna do it again right here. Okay, so medium pressure, and then I'm gonna color on top of it with the other color. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with a white. And with the white, I'm going to color just on top where they mixed. And that's gonna help finish it off and mix it in a little bit better. And look at the difference. Look at what happens when I just color on top of each other, and then when I go back and add the white, look at that creamy, beautiful color it creates. I like that, it looks really good. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to burnishing. Burnishing is a technique where you once again kind of mix in the color a little bit more or fill in the space. And you can do that with a metal spoon. You could do it with a paper towel or a tissue wrapped around your finger, or you could even do it with a colorless blender. So this is a colorless blender. It's just a rolled up piece of paper, and these are made specifically for burnishing and blending things in. So the first method, though, I'm going to show you is mixing in colors by heavy pressure. So I'm going to color my blue in, medium pressure, okay? And then I'm going to go on top of that with my white, and I'm going to color in so hard it mixes it in, okay? I'm coloring so hard it mixes it in and it blends it, okay? So coloring hard is one way to burnish. Now, with a colorless blender, I'm gonna color in like so. All right, same blue. And then I'm gonna get my colorless blender and I'm going to color in with it. You just kind of use it like a pencil, and it's going to burnish it. It's going to mix it in, make it a little bit more solid, and it also helps to make it a little bit shiny. That's what I love about burnishing it. Like, not only smooths everything out, it makes it shiny. All right, hang in there, we're almost done. We have one more technique to do, and that is hatching on a curve. So a little refresher, hatching is when you have a bunch of lines to create texture, and the closer they are together, the darker it will appear. The less lines and the further away from each other they are, the lighter it will appear. So we have a circle here, but we're going to turn it into a ball. Okay, so we're going to make this circle look like a ball that you could hold in your hand. So that's why we're hatching on a curve. So I don't want you to color this circle in like you're coloring in a circle. I want you to pretend like you're actually coloring on a sphere. So think that like if you color this way, your pencil's going to wrap around it. All right. I made a little arrow with a reminder right here that this is where I want my light coming from. So we need to keep that in mind. So the closer we are to the light, the brighter it's going to be. The further away from the light, the darker it's going to be. So we should go from a light, slowly changing to a medium, and then it should fade into a dark. But I don't want you to color back and forth in a line. I want you to kind of color in like a kind of a circular motion. And remember, we're doing hatching, so if we want it lighter, we have less lines further away, and then the darker we want it away from our light, the more lines and the closer they're going to be. So I'm going to start right here. So I'm going to just, okay, and I'm going to go in because we're getting a little bit further away from the light. Okay, so my lines can get closer. Going in a circular motion because I want it to look like a ball. Now here is where I am going to do them closer, more together. Okay, I can do a little bit more here so that it is darker because it's further away from the light. And don't forget the sides because they should wrap around. Okay. Now we're doing hatching, we're not doing cross hatching. You can do cross hatching on this method, but I would like you to practice this first so that you get a little bit more comfortable. And we want our colors to slowly change from one to the next. We don't want dark, medium, light, because light is not segmented like that. I'm going at a curve, so it gives the appearance that the ball is rounded. And if you even want to go right here and do that, like a little circle, that'll help. Okay, and let's see, it's getting there. It goes really hard to medium right here. I kind of want that to fade in. So I'm going to add a little bit more. And you don't have to use violet like I'm using. You can use any color you like. Remember, the darker the color, the more abrasive, the more heavier it's going to look. So if you wanted to do something a little bit lighter, you could go in and do that. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so it's starting to look like a ball. Now obviously you can keep working on it and adding more layers, but that is pretty much the idea of how to hatch on a curve. You're just using that curved motion. You're not getting too, you're not going back and forth in a line. You're going with the curve, like you're actually coloring on a ball. And then our little circle is going to slowly start to look like a sphere. Pretty cool little trick, huh? And now, like I said, it takes a while just to kind of make it look like it's supposed to, so you will not be done by the time the video is over if you're doing this a lot. It's something you have to slowly just keep working on and building and building. Rome wasn't built in a day, but as far as knowing how to get started, is. And once you know how to get started, you can just keep going. And you start to be in control, and then you are creating the world's most beautiful spheres. And a little bit more shadow. That's it. So you can keep working on it, of course, but those are our color pencil techniques. You can do this, all of these same techniques with the nice, expensive, fancy Prismacolors. You can also do them with the peasant colored pencils, like the ones that were, like I'm using, or you can use watercolor pencils. The possibilities are endless. So I want you to get started on your color pencil techniques and have fun.